Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are finally going over the results of my themed Letterboxd 4 series for the month of July, which was superhero films. Now you may be thinking to yourself that we're pretty much all the way through August, so what do you mean we're still going over the results of July? I apologize for getting this video out super late. I usually have the videos kind of go like a couple days into the next month just so I can kind of finish getting the last couple movies that I wanted to see and then start getting everything kind of all together for the video. And so I kind of had the day that I knew I was going to record this video at the beginning of this month, and then I ended up deciding to push it one more day because there was one more movie I wanted to sneak in. So I pushed my recording by a day, and then that next day when it came, I wasn't feeling very well, and so I was like, okay, maybe hopefully this is just like a little 24-hour thing, and I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll just kind of keep delaying it a day at a time. And then I ended up being sick for probably about 7 to 10 days or so, and then the worst part was then there was about 5 days after that when I wasn't really sick anymore, but my voice was still awful and gone, and so a whole lot of kind of delays this last 15-ish days or so, so that's why this video is getting out so late. But again, apologies for this being out late, and then very quickly after this I'll get the August theme video out, and I've already been watching all the movies for that, so hopefully that one won't be as delayed as this one, but we'll get the ball rolling. But in this one we are going over the results of the superhero film genre, which was the theme for July. Now, before we go over that final Letterboxd 4, I do want to just remind you of a couple kind of like exclusions or things that we're not going to talk about in this video. And the exclusions, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is not going to be in this video today because I have the rule where everything's only eligible once, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was in my best animated films themed Letterboxd 4, so that's why that's not here. And then the other exclusion that I wanted to remind you about, and I'm going to mention it a couple times throughout the video as well, is that I restricted myself to just one film per superhero, because then otherwise I felt like it was going to be 4 Spider-Man films, essentially. At least 2 or 3. Like, there was so many Spider-Man films that are some of my favorite superhero movies, and so I just didn't want it to get repetitive, so I limited it to that. The last thing that I do want to mention here is that I did watch every single film in the MCU, but in order to save time on this video, I'm going to be doing a separate video or two about the MCU in the next couple months or so on my channel, so we're just going to not talk about the MCU at all. We'll give an MCU ranking and some additional videos coming a little bit later where I discuss all of the films in a little bit more in depth, and just to save some time on this video from it not being an hour and a half talking about every single film in the MCU, so we will be skipping all of the MCU in this video. And then let's take a look at the honorable mentions. First off, there's 3 films that I watched in the last couple months that I want to talk about. Mystery Men. This was a film that I found hysterical as a kid, but it didn't quite live up to the memories I had of it. I still enjoyed the movie on this rewatch, but I enjoyed it more as a superhero movie than I did as a straight comedy. I do have a lot of fun with the non-traditional superhero story, and had a lot of fun watching a bunch of these this month. The Incredibles 2. A sequel that doesn't quite have all the magic of the first film, but it is still a damn good movie. Jack having an expanded part of the story was a blast, and adds to the already strong familial bond. I am very excited for Incredibles 3, even if Brad Bird is only writing and not directing the film. Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. A beautiful follow-up to the original Spider-Verse. There was a lot said about the film feeling incomplete due to the cliffhanger ending and lack of resolution with the villain, but the growth of Miles and Gwen is a satisfying conclusion for me. And I've said it once and I'll say it again, get in the booth now and get us beyond the Spider-Verse already. Now for the honorable mentions of the films that I watched this month. Superman. It's always a risk going back several decades to watch old CGI-heavy films, but not only does this look good for its time, it still looks good today. This is the first Superman film I've seen outside of the DCEU, and this is probably my favorite portrayal of Kal-El. Superman isn't my favorite superhero, but I can totally see how he would be so many people's favorites if this was their introduction to the character. Superman 2. Not that I was the biggest fan of Lex Luthor as a villain in the original film, but Zod, Ursa, and Non felt like steps down as villains to me here in the sequel. And this film doesn't have the benefit of the origin story that the original film had, so this is a slight step down to me. You can tell that everyone involved cared in the production of the film, though, which can't be said about this franchise much longer. Superman 3. This could just be a negative effect of being MCU-brained, but this is a film in the franchise that doesn't feel like it's doing much for the franchise in terms of building the characters in the universe, so it feels like a waste of time. Richard Pryor's Gus Gorman does stand out, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good thing. While it went out on a dud, at least the franchise didn't oh no, 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 Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. We've reached the point in the franchise where it feels like the overwhelming majority of people involved have checked out. I don't know if the barely 90-minute runtime was a result of no one wanting to be there, but I'm glad it wasn't stretched out any longer. I had a lot of fun with the Christopher Reeve Superman franchise, but I likely won't watch this one on future rewatches of the franchise. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. While not an actual superhero film, I'm very glad I watched it and am including it in this video. I was unfamiliar with Christopher Reeve, as I had never seen any of his Superman films, nor anything else he had been in. This was a very beautiful and touching documentary of a great man that clearly meant the world to so many people. Superman Returns. I didn't even know that this film existed prior to my Superman prep work. The film didn't work for me, but I did see that there are a decent amount of defenders for the film. I think if this was your introduction to Superman, then you'll be more fond of it, but if I'm looking for my Superman fix, I'll likely either go back to Christopher Reeve's films or the newest franchise. Superman. I'm waiting a bit before I definitively say this, so I'm not a prisoner of the moment, but this just might be my favorite Superman film. David Corenswet's performance filled me with so much hope and optimism, but it's Nicholas Holtz's Lex Luthor that really brings the film together. James Gunn just has the sauce, and I'm very excited to see where his DCU goes from here. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. I am admittedly pretty unfamiliar with a lot of the characters from the Batman comics, and am even more unfamiliar with this specific franchise. Even so, I had a lot of fun being dropped into this world. I didn't get around to it this month, but this film did leave me very interested in diving into the rest of Kevin Conroy's Batman films. Fantastic Four. This was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and was essentially the only non-Spider-Man superhero film that I saw. I can acknowledge that this isn't great, but it is one of my guilty pleasure films that I will always like more than I should. Jessica Alba and Chris Evans were two of my favorite actors due to this film. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Even though I loved the first film as a kid, I really wasn't a big fan of this sequel. This is also a film that 5 minutes after watching it, I can't remember much of the film outside of the additions of Andre Braugher and Lawrence Fishburne's Silver Surfer. I am so happy we finally have a proper Galactus on film with the newest edition. Chronicle. This is one of my good friend's favorite movies, so this has always been on my radar. Unfortunately, it didn't reach those heights for me, but I still admire the ambition of it. Josh Trank has a great feel for the superhero genre, so I'm sure whatever he does next will be amazing. Fantastic Four. Well, never mind. I saw this several years after it came out, so I was well prepared for how bad it was going to be, based off of everyone's reviews, but I was surprised that I may have liked it less than I was expecting. Each time I watch this, I'm genuinely shocked at how long it takes them to start Fantastic Fouring. There are so many talented people involved in this for it to turn out the way that it did. Hellboy. This didn't completely win me over, but I liked it a lot more than I would have if it wasn't directed by Guillermo del Toro. The creature designs here are all top-notch, and really add to the atmosphere. This came out in the mid-2000s era, when the superhero genre was still finding itself, so it's easy to see how a film that had such a distinct voice in the genre has so many fans. Sky High. This was the pinnacle of cinema when I was a kid. I hadn't seen this in nearly 2 decades, so I was nervous to see how it holds up, but it held up beautifully in my opinion. Watching this transported me back to my younger self, and I had a blast all the way through the Bowling for Soup cover in the credits. Zoom. After Sky High, I was all in on Zoom as well when I first saw the trailer as a kid. I remember not really liking it as a kid, which means it really had to be bad if I was critical of it as a kid. Don't get me wrong, it's not great, but I actually enjoyed it a bit more than I was expecting to on this rewatch. Spider-Man. I can't remember if it was this one or Spider-Man 2, but I have a distinct memory of being in the theater and being scared, but having a great time. The Tobey Maguire films, well, at least 1 and 2, means so much to me as they do to so many people. This was an easy cut due to the 1 film per superhero rule, but if I didn't enforce that, then this would have been a lot harder to cut from the final Letterboxd 4. The Batman. The debate online for the last month or so has been the Batman vs. The Dark Knight, and by putting the Batman in the honorable mentions, I guess that's my answer for which I prefer. But I find myself liking the Batman more and more with each rewatch. The slow-paced mystery really puts you into the Pattinson universe and creates an atmosphere worth rewatching over and over again. Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. I still have a vivid memory of my Birds of Prey / Emma double feature as my last theater trip before the pandemic, but I could barely remember any of this plot. I was excited for my first rewatch in 5 years to see if I liked it as much as I did back then. It isn't a perfect movie by any means, but it is a lot of fun, which is more than I could say about the majority of the DCEU. The Suicide Squad. James Gunn truly has the magic touch when it comes to taking a group of D-list characters, and in Polka Dot Man's case, Z-list, and making them feel like the most important characters in the cinematic universe. A story about a group of, quote, bad guys shouldn't have as much heart as this does, but Danielle Melchior's Ratcatcher 2 in particular really makes me care for these characters. I'm not always the best at watching television shows due to all of the movies I watch, but I can't wait to get into Peacemaker now that Season 2 is about to premiere. The Old Guard. I remember I liked this when I first saw it a few years ago, but for the life of me I couldn't remember much of the story at all, which probably says something. The film has some ideas that work really well and has me invested, but ultimately focuses on a lot of the world-building ideas that didn't exactly work for me. Time to watch the sequel to see if the additional world-building can bring me back in. The Old Guard 2. Despite liking the first film, I wasn't all that excited for the sequel, and the script didn't do a whole ton to prove my lack of excitement wrong. For as much as I wasn't feeling the film, it did surprise me that the cliffhanger ending did leave me curious for where The Old Guard 3 goes. I mean, I don't know if I'll actually watch it, but I am curious. Hancock. I could have sworn I saw this once as a kid, but there was next to nothing here that seemed familiar. I was enjoying the first half a lot, but for as fun as the Charlize Theron reveal is, I do think the film lost my interest from that point on. I wish the film would have stayed more with the comedic stylings of the first half, or dove even deeper into the lore of our superhero characters, instead of playing both sides. Kick-Ass. I saw this once when I was a kid, and remember thinking it was one of the funniest movies I had ever seen. Going into my first rewatch all these years later, I was really worried about it not holding up, but I'm happy to report that it's even funnier than I remember it being. Not only is it funny, but I thought it was a very well-written script as well, and the plot elevates this from just a fun film to a good film. Kick-Ass 2. I had seen the trailer for this once, a dozen years ago or so, and the only thing that I knew about the film was that Jim Carrey was in it. So seeing Daniel Kaluuya, Ella Purnell, and Benedict Wong all pop up was pretty fun, but the first film works in part due to the shock factor, which is just not here anymore. And there are just so many decisions regarding the plot that I couldn't believe were happening. Super. While I do like the premise of this, it didn't come together as well as Kick-Ass did for me. I'm glad James Gunn was able to nail down his comedic style, because this edgy style humor isn't as good as his latest films. Rainn Wilson is solid for what his role is, but it's Elliot Page and the rest of Gunn's rotating cast of characters and supporting roles that elevate the film. And from the Letterboxd 4 in the preview video, there are a couple changes, so let's take a look at the films that are leaving the Letterboxd 4. Logan. It was really tough leaving Logan out of the Letterboxd 4, because I really do love it as a conclusion for a superhero, which is something that you don't get to see a whole ton. Wolverine's So This Is What It Feels Like, X-23 calling Logan Daddy, her quoting Shane, and turning the cross to an X, all in a 5-minute span, always leaves me an emotional mess throughout the credits. I do think the film would work even more for me if I was a bigger X-Man fan, but even so, it works amazingly by itself. Spider-Man: No Way Home. I still maintain that this is a 5-star movie, and would have kept its spot in the Letterboxd 4 if I didn't implement the rule of only one film per superhero. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and seeing a film bring multiple eras of Spider-Men and villains together just makes me so happy. It's also still one of the top MCU films that makes me the most emotional. And finally, let's jump into the final Letterboxd 4. The Dark Knight. Batman raises the stakes in his war on crime. With the help of Lieutenant Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, Batman sets out to dismantle the remaining criminal organizations that plague the streets. The partnership proves to be effective, but they soon find themselves prey to a reign of chaos unleashed by a rising criminal mastermind known to the terrified citizens of Gotham as the Joker. The film won 2 Oscars at the 2009 Academy Awards, Best Sound Editing and Best Supporting Actor for Heath Ledger. The film was also nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Visual Effects, Best Art Direction, Best Makeup, and Best Sound Mixing. The Dark Knight was released in 2008 and was directed by Christopher Nolan. The film stars Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, and Aaron Eckhart. And again, like I was talking about in the honorable mentions, the whole Batman vs. Dark Knight debate, I guess this is my definitive answer. I'm going with that I do prefer the Dark Knight to the Batman. But I think part of it is just because of the Dark Knight is the film that I have spent more time with. Now, admittedly, I haven't spent as much time as a lot of people. I didn't see this, back when when did I see the Dark Knight for the first time? Probably like 2018, 2019, something like that. Like, it was years later, like a decade after it came out. and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I watched The Dark Knight before even watching like Batman Begins, because I had just heard so many great things, so many people talking about their love for The Dark Knight, how it's one of their favorite I mean, not just superhero movies, but like one of the best movies ever. And I was just really excited to jump into it. And so I remember just kind of jumping straight into The Dark Knight, and I don't even think I had started with Batman Begins, at least on the first watch. And The Dark Knight is one of those that I think the very first time I saw it, I kind of was I loved it. Like, it was fun, but it didn't click all the way for me as like this super emotional, like, masterpiece of a film, you know. And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, you know, Heath Ledger obviously is phenomenal in this, and obviously so is everyone else. But obviously it's Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, that is the character of this film. That is the star, the standout, the Oscar-winning role of this film. And so I remember thinking he was really good, but the whole thing didn't come together. And I don't know if it's because now that I've seen Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, seen the whole trilogy multiple times now, I don't know if it's just because I have the whole story now that The Dark Knight hits harder on additional rewatches. But every time I watch this film, that final act, Batman's monologue as he's talking to Jim Gordon, as he's talking about that he's whatever Gotham needs Batman to be. He'll be the hero, he'll be the villain, like, he'll be just whatever it takes to keep this city together, you know, to keep Gotham from turning it, you know, on itself and falling victim to the Joker and his schemes and everything he was trying to do. It's just it's an ending that is like very epic, but it also like leaves me with this like hope and this, you know, respect for this portrayal of Batman, for the sacrifice that he's willing to make at this moment in order to protect the image of Harvey Dent and let Harvey Dent remain this hero to the people, because he doesn't want the Joker to win. By revealing the true nature of what Harvey became, that is what's going to allow, you know, the Joker to win. And so it's this message, and it's these final moments that just work for me so well. Again, I don't need to sit here and, you know, defend The Dark Knight or tell you why The Dark Knight's good. Obviously, if you've seen the film, you know why it's good, and I wouldn't be surprised if The Dark Knight isn't in the majority of people's like 4 favorite superhero films of all time. The Incredibles. Bob Parr has given up his superhero days to log in time as an insurance adjuster and raise his 3 children with his formerly heroic wife in suburbia. But when he receives a mysterious assignment, it's time to get back into costume. The film won 2 Oscars at the 2005 Academy Awards, Best Animated Feature and Best Sound Editing. The film was also nominated for Best Original Screenplay and Best Sound Mixing. The Incredibles was released in 2004 and was directed by Brad Bird. The film stars Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, and Sarah Vowell. Now, a couple months ago in my animated films Letterboxd for, The Incredibles just barely missed the cut, but I mentioned in that video that I said I'm pretty confident it's going to find its way into, into a future video, and this was it. This is one of my favorite superhero films. There's something about... Again, I think a lot of people are obviously drawing the comparisons between The Incredibles and the Fantastic Four, and kind of talking about the overlap with some of the characters, some of the powers that are similar. And obviously there's just some kind of... Because The Incredibles, what it is, you know, it's a kid's film. It's a family film, family superhero film that is a little bit more... I don't want to say like cookie cutter or like standard, but it does follow a lot of kind of these traditional beats. But I think that's what makes it this more complete superhero film for me, is it is so much about like family. Like, this isn't just a team or a group. Like, as much as you can say, you know, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, they become, you know, a family. But there's something different when it really is just like, this is your family. This is the group that we're working with here. This is our cast of characters. The decisions that they make, you know, sometimes it's selfish. You know, Bob specifically, you know, Mr. Incredible, he's making these decisions selfishly for himself, and he's not realizing or taking the time to acknowledge potentially the damage or the harm that it's putting his family in. And the just kind of playing with those emotions, playing with those themes of family, I think is just what makes this such a complete film for me. The Incredibles is one of those that as a kid, obviously I loved it. When Incredibles 2 came out, you know, what, like 14 years later is how long the gap was between those two. I just remember being so excited and so ready to go see that film, because even though at that point when that came out I hadn't really rewatched The Incredibles in so long, it was still always one of my favorite movies, and especially looking back and saying, like, as a kid, one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a group of characters that you're super invested in, and it's a beautiful story. Again, this is another one of those that I don't think I necessarily have to make the case for why The Incredibles is like a top tier superhero film. If you've seen the film, and if you've seen a lot of films in the superhero genre, you realize that some of the things that other films, some of the areas where it kind of lacks, in The Incredibles, those themes and everything kind of comes together and it works because of the heart and the emotion and the beauty that's told in this story. And I think also just the animation style looks really good. Like, one of the complaints you get a lot about with characters that have super speed is just that it doesn't, it's hard to make that look good or cool. You kind of have to just resort to the slow motion and let them kind of just be moving around at what looks like a normal speed while everything else is like frozen, basically, to represent how fast they're going. But in this, with Dash, they do an excellent job of just kind of, because of the animation, it lends itself to being able to tell this story a little bit differently. Elastigirl, all of her, her stretching abilities, like, I think it all works better and looks better in like animation as opposed to, like a Mr. Fantastic and in live action Fantastic Four films. Like, it just, everything kind of, their powers and everything looks better in animation. I think animation in itself is like primed for just good superhero movies because of how beautiful you're able to portray their powers, how good that all looks on film. So again, I don't think Incredibles is a film that I have to really sell as a great film. I think a lot of people really kind of just love it and understand that it is a good film. Spider-Man 2. Peter Parker is going through a major identity crisis. Burned out from being Spider-Man, he decides to shelve his superhero alter ego, which leaves the city suffering in the wake of carnage left by the evil Doc Ock. In the meantime, Parker still can't act on his feelings for Mary Jane Watson, a girl he's loved since childhood. A certain anger begins to brew in his best friend Harry Osborn as well. The film won the Best Visual Effects Oscar at the 2005 Academy Awards. The film was also nominated for Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Editing. Spider-Man 2 was released in 2004 and was directed by Sam Raimi. The film stars Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, and Alfred Molina. And here we are now, 3 for 3 on films that I don't think I necessarily have to justify or, explain why they're here. I think Spider-Man 2 is kind of among the consensus. I think a lot of people's again, that's hard to say because there's so many different Spider-Man movies and they're all so good, and so you could probably get a whole bunch of answers. But I think Spider-Man 2 is maybe the consensus in terms of the best, at least in terms of the Tobey Maguire trilogy. I think it's pretty universal consensus the best. And Spider-Man 2 is one of those that, I guess, first off, let's talk about, because Spider-Man No Way Home was in my Letterboxd 4 in the preview video, and it did drop out for this because, again, I just one film per superhero, so this came in and took the Spider-Man slot. And I still love No Way Home, and it's very well, like, again, if I didn't make that rule, it would have been in here over something else. But Spider-Man 2, this is one of those where watching this on this rewatch, there was something about, again, just kind of the simplicity and the beauty of it in terms of just it, obviously, how a lot of MCU movies are shot nowadays, especially No Way Home itself receives a whole lot of kind of backlash and criticism for how it looks, certain shots, but to me, it's there's something about the how good Spider-Man 2 looks for how it's shot. You're getting Sam Raimi in there with his kind of, again, some of the the practical effects and stuff that he does in the film, but also just the way that he's able to set up certain scenes, kind of the bits of horror and stuff that are being put in there. There was just a whole lot of it that was all kind of just clicking and working for me. And again, I've always loved Spider-Man 2. I didn't know it was going to overtake No Way Home necessarily when I was rewatching it, but as I was watching this, it just more and more as it was going on, it just felt like, yeah, this is getting a spot in the final Letterboxd 4. And another reason for that I kind of want to talk about is this thing that I do a lot where if there's a franchise that I haven't seen in a while that has, I would say maybe 3+ films, that's maybe the requirement of it. If there's 3+ films in an older trilogy, and if I haven't seen it in a while, what tends to happen is I remember a lot of the moments, and I remember a lot of things from that trilogy. And these are like the standout moments, and I think about, Spider-Man, stopping the train and his mask getting ripped off, and everyone seeing his and seeing that he's a kid, and seeing that it's Peter Parker, but everyone on that train agreeing that they're not going to tell anyone, and what's the line, if careful, he's a hero. I think of that, and then I think of there's the scene with Spider-Man Peter Parker when he's talking to Aunt May, and he tells her that he's the reason that Uncle Ben died, and there's that emotional scene, and then kind of like when she's moving, that next emotional scene where she's like really kind of convinces him to be that he has to be, obviously her not exactly knowing that he's Spider-Man, but still saying that there's still a need for a hero in this world, and the neighbor kid looks up to Spider-Man, and she wishes Spider-Man was back. There's that whole emotional scene. Then you think of just the emotional ending, everything with Doc Ock's character and with the character turn that he has. There's just all of these like iconic Spider-Man moments, and those are like the things that I think of when I think of the trilogy as a whole. And then when I go back and watch it, and I realize that all of those moments that I remember are in the same film, that's what makes it so beautiful. And on this rewatch for me, just like such a emotional and a like just a beautiful experience, just seeing all of these iconic moments and realizing these were all in the same film. And so I think that is a big part of why Spider-Man 2 is such a big favorite for so many people. Also, again, just I think Doc Ock is probably one of the I would be interested to see if someone had like a list. I saw there was one. I think it was just for the MCU specifically, but I would love to see if someone made a list of just like the best comic book villains of all time, and see where like Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, where he falls like in that list, because again, he's maybe not necessarily the most menacing or the most threatening, but I think just the whole kind of character arc that he has, the whole kind of turn he has really toward the end, it's a beautiful character, and just everything about this film is just, have I said beautiful yet? Like that is just like that is the word for me in terms of this film. And so I think for me, even though No Way Home brings out the emotions, I do think that No Way Home does a lot of things that work for kind of the Tom Holland, I've drawn a blank on his name there, the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, which as a whole I don't think it necessarily, like, it's fun having Spider-Man in the MCU, but that franchise doesn't necessarily feel like it is its own universe and its own Spider-Man, like, is the main hero of this universe, like he is the guy, as much as the Tobey Maguire films do. And so it's just something about this on this specific rewatch, it all just clicked together a whole lot for me. And again, I think the Spider-Man films, there's so many of them, cause, there's the Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse that I love so much as well. I love Homecoming and Far From Home as well. I love the first Spider-Man. I admit I didn't rewatch the Andrew Garfield. I do think I need to give the Amazing Spider-Man films a rewatch. I've only seen those once years ago, and so I do need to give those another chance. But there's just so many Spider-Man films in general that all just are so beautiful that I think that as I rewatch just those over the years, I'm sure my Spider-Man ranking will continue to flip-flop, but for now, it's Spider-Man 2 on top. Unbreakable. An ordinary man makes an extraordinary discovery when a train accident leaves his fellow passengers dead and him unscathed. The answer to this mystery could lie with the mysterious Elijah Price, a man who suffers from a disease that renders his bones as fragile as glass. Unbreakable was released in 2000 and was directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The film stars Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, and Robin Wright. Now, at the beginning of the month, I do my preview video where I give you my current Letterboxd 4 plus like 3 contenders, and like those are like those top 7, essentially kind of like my top 7 in a category. And I didn't have Unbreakable in the Letterboxd 4 or in the honorable, or the 3 contenders category, simply because I just kind of spaced it. It's something, when you think of the superhero genre, your mind goes straight to kind of the traditional superheroes. You think of the MCU, you think of the DCU, you think about just like the Batman, the Christopher Nolan films, you think about The Incredibles. Your mind goes to all of these different spots, and you're thinking about these traditional superhero stories that my brain just kind of blanked on Unbreakable, which is clearly stupid because I love this film and it should have always kind of had its spot here. And I'm glad I remembered it and was able to rewatch it and put it in here. I'm going to put a link in the description on this video for my I did an M Night Shyamalan ranked video, and so I go into more depth in that video about my love for Unbreakable. But there's something just so beautiful about Unbreakable to me, of this film where you get and it's very, and this is one where I could see Unbreakable not working for a lot of people because it is slow. It does take its time. It's this kind of plays out more like a mystery, and you don't really get a whole lot of the superhero stuff till the end of the film. And so I really just, but I think that's where I find the emotion and everything that's working so well in this film is from a little bit more of like the mystery of the film is what's working, because ultimately what this is it's kind of like an origin story in a sense, but it's not necessarily an origin story for David Dunn, for the Unbreakable, for his character, Bruce Willis's character here in the film. It's not, I mean, as much as I guess it is an origin story for him, but the way I view the film and the way that M Night Shyamalan is telling this film is it's more so like an origin story for just like superheroes in general, or like the superhero genre. There's so much about this that is just kind of Elijah Price, Samuel L. Jackson's character, is just this mastermind that's kind of playing these things and exploring himself on like what is a superhero, what is a supervillain, like do these exist, is that what their roles are in this universe? And so there's a lot of what he's doing there. It's kind of coming back to comic books specifically and understanding the roles of the hero and the villain, and what they mean to each other, what they are to each other. Can one exist without the other? Like there's just all of these kind of these deep philosophical questions in terms of like the superhero universe that are being explored here. And again, there isn't as much superhero stuff going on until the third act of this film, but so much of it is just this slow mystery kind of leading you from really kind of this, it seems like it's this drama. The beginning of the film is this a marriage on the rocks, and this man who's in this deadly train accident kills everyone but him, and then you're finding about his backstory, and like, oh, this guy doesn't get hurt, he doesn't, he feels pain, but it doesn't like, he's able to, be, he's just unbreakable essentially. He's able to endure that pain, and he doesn't get sick or injured or hurt. And so it's just this interesting story of like seeing this drama turns into this mystery that then turns into this superhero film by the end. And so it's just something about the way, and again, because this film is slow, but it is slow and it's deliberately paced, and the pacing of this film just works for me. This is also one of these days I really need to sit down and like actually make a list of like my favorite film scores of all time. But I love the music in Unbreakable. It's not used a whole ton, but it is like kind of in the background. It's really soft in certain scenes, but then kind of the swelling of it towards like the third act as the superhero stuff is happening is just, it makes me not like emotional to the point that I'm crying, but it just makes me happy. It fills me with joy. It's just a stunning piece of music that I love. And again, there's so much about this film that just works for me. I wish I had seen this film before I had seen Split. All those years ago, I think I would have. I think I would have liked it the same. I don't know if I would have liked it any more, because Split did really have me very invested in it. But Unbreakable was one of those. As soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is clearly the best of that trilogy that M. Night's doing. The Unbreakable, it's just one of my favorite films. Again, I'll put that link in the description if you want to click on that and see where Unbreakable lands in my M. Night Shyamalan ranking. But I just truly love this film, and I'm glad that I remembered it and was able to talk about it, because in terms of this four, I think three of the films are pretty easy picks, and so I love being able to put Unbreakable in there and give that the recognition it deserves, because it truly is one of my favorite superhero films of all time. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below what your favorite superhero films of all time are, or what you think of those final four films that I picked. And again, apologies for getting this video out so late, and I'm sure my voice still isn't like great. Probably wasn't a whole lot of fun listening to in this video, but hopefully as the days go by, it'll get a little bit better. And so I'm hopefully getting this up as soon as possible tomorrow, hopefully, from when I'm recording this. And then very soon, a day or two later, I'll get the theme for August up. Again, I have already been watching a whole bunch of the films, so, and then again in the next early bit of September, we'll go over the August films as well. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to leave those comments down below what you thought of this, and if you'd like to like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.